Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Emotions. An important thing, I'd say we all have them, to varying different degrees of course. I think emotion is important and it plays a big role. But if you're blinded by emotion, if you're guided by short-sighted emotion, it can be very dangerous, very deadly, very bad, especially if you're somebody in a leadership position who wields significant power and influence. Sometimes common sense has to prevail, sometimes sacrifice has to be made, despite feeling bad or somebody getting the short end of the stick. That's decisive leadership, that's good leadership. Sometimes you need to make hard decisions. Well, this is a particular place where I think the left fails spectacularly. We all know this, emotion plays a big part in terms of how the left governs. A lot of the policies that we see start from a bad feeling or a sort of sensitivity to a particular group or particular issue, and then of course the savior complex comes into effect. Policies are implemented and money is spent without accounting for the long-term consequences, or in these cases, unforeseen consequences. The left creates policy based on emotion, and it is an absolute disaster. That's it for the intro, that's the groundwork I want to lay. Now let's attempt to make the point through real-world examples. We've got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so we all know what's happening at the southern border. It's a complete crisis. Operation Lone Star is then taking all of those illegal migrants that are crossing over thanks to Biden's inaction and sending them to Democrat cities, specifically sanctuary cities. Well, next on the list is Boston, Massachusetts, a far-left Democrat Party bastion, and while you would think the politicians would be looking at New York, looking at Chicago, looking at the southern border in its entirety and thinking, well, maybe it's time to rethink this, to rethink declaring ourselves a sanctuary city, to rethink our, federal border policies. Maybe it's time to do a 180, but no, of course not. That's not what's happening. What's happening is a complete mirror of what we saw in New York City. Look at this.
Emotional, guys, okay? Because I'm committed to this. Little kids need to be able to breathe clean air. They need to be able to access swimming pools. They need to have lifeguards there who are going to teach them how to swim. And they need to have activities. I don't know what we're going to do for a couple, 3 months. I'll call universities, I'll call other places.
The governor went on to say she is also looking at other locations, but has not said exactly where.
That's Massachusetts Democrat Governor Maura Healey, all flustered and emotional when talking about the illegal migrants entering her city. It's the exact same pattern. Emotional, Democrat, liberal politician looks at people, feels bad, and then bends over backwards, using other people's money, in other words, taxpayer dollars, reaching into your frickin' pocket to hand out the charity to literally anybody who needs it. It's completely idiotic because what we're talking about here is the issue of housing illegal migrants. And Massachusetts is doing exactly what New York City did, except probably a whole lot worse, taking over an entire recreational center in a predominantly African-American community, converting the recreational center to house illegal migrants.
Look inside the new temporary shelter, which will be a safe space for hundreds of families over the next few months. The Melnia Cass Rec Center.
A recreational center in Roxbury, now a temporary safety net site with beds, play areas, and other necessities for incoming migrant families that the governor and community leaders toured today.
We're here today because we really don't have a choice.
State and city leaders say they've all been moved by the plight of families, many now camping out at Logan Airport with no place to go, and a state shelter system stretched to the limit. But the decision to make it a temporary home until May 31st for migrant families is called humanitarian, but also difficult by some. And Boston Mayor Michelle Wu acknowledged that today.
This is not the first time that this community has been asked to sacrifice over and over again, and so we'll continue to work with the state and ensure that all options are on the table.
Now, the governor says she hopes the community will be helped, not burdened by the plan, saying local vendors will be used to provide food and other necessities here, and funding will be provided for long-awaited upgrades to the Melnia Cass Recreational Center once the temporary shelter is closed.
You see where I'm going with this, right? This is what emotional sort of enabling parent style politics gives you. I think I've made this point before, but I'll make it again because I think it's a great comparison. It's the overly emotional, extremely attached estranged mother and sometimes father that has a son or daughter who's a substance abuser, a rock-bottom drug addict for a child, and they make matters worse by enabling the addiction, by driving them to go pick up drugs, by putting a roof over their head, allowing them to do those drugs in their home and steal their possessions and pawn their possessions, constantly subsidizing bad behavior through bad emotional decisions. Except in these cases, I think it's a whole lot worse, because you're not talking about a parent with their own home, their own possessions, and their own dollars, foolishly throwing everything down the drain to enable their child's drug addiction. We're talking about politicians taking your money to subsidize problems. Who do you think gets the short end of the stick here? It's regular community members who now all of a sudden don't have a recreational center for their children to take advantage of. The backlash is already starting.
And I saw your outrage. Why are you outraged?
Because this place was, like you said, it's free. It was a place for our children. Our children, I have 4 children, and it's sad. We really don't have nothing in the community that's free for us. Don't get me wrong, it's great that they want to help the immigrants, but what about the Americans that are already here? What about the people that are already here that don't have homes, that don't have jobs, that are sleeping on the street already?
I mean, I think a lot of cities across this country are, once they declare themselves a sanctuary city, I'm not sure if they knew the amount of support we were going to need to give.
Was that, I know you're a Democrat, but do you think declaring cities as sanctuaries was a mistake in retrospect?
Looking back, if our communities end up losing the services they need to live full lives, I think we may be questioning that.
You know, like when we look for help, it seems like the state and the governor and them people, they push us away. They want to turn our children to animals. They want our children to be bad and F up. Yeah. We want better for our community, but this right here is going to be a shit show, and it's going to be crazy.
Live here. And I've been here my whole because I can yell. Because I can yell. Because I can yell. Y'all give a about the motherfuckers that was born and raised here. I'm homeless. I work a full-time job, 40 hours. And can't pay to live here. How the y'all gonna bring somebody else here?
I think the most important question there is, why don't they help the people here first? That's exactly it. This type of emotional approach feels good in the moment. No life left behind. The poor people coming from the southern border, the women, the children, we must take care of them. Yeah, at the expense of who? At the expense of taxpayer dollars and at the expense of American citizens and your community members who are now getting shafted, who have been getting shafted for generations, who are now being overlooked because the Democrat priority is illegal migrants who are criminals by definition. Their first act into the nation was a crime breaking border laws, people who came in illegitimately to work illegally to then send money back home, people who are attempting to fraud the asylum system by launching false asylum bids in order to get refugee status. Those are the people who Democrats are prioritizing. They tell you that they're just doing the right thing. You are doing the wrong thing for what you believe are the right reasons. That's not leadership, that is idiocracy. A real leader knows to protect and preserve, to make important decisions. One of those important decisions is understanding how to prioritize your own constituents, your own voters, the people of your community. And of course, open border Democrats would say, well, that's racist, that's nationalist. Borders are just an arbitrary concept, bro. We're the people of the world. We should be taking care of everyone. You know, spare me the naive nonsense. Taking care of everyone. Yeah, let's just let all 8 billion people immigrate to the United States and give everybody UBI. Absolutely genius. Obviously, that's completely unsustainable and makes no sense. And the idea that we're solving issues by allowing the world's poor to simply walk on in is arguably the most idiotic element of all of this. The countries that lose the most when you take their productive members of society, who do you think wins in these, let's call them, migrant transactions? A lot of the times you have good, hardworking, honest people, and in many cases a lot of young people, either military-aged men or sometimes girls and boys, fleeing their home country to go work as a permanent underclass, undocumented worker in the United States. Who's winning in that transaction? I don't even know if the illegal migrant is winning, to be honest with you. It's kind of a cruddy life to not have documents in the country that you're living in. And of course, if if we look at the source country, they're losing their next generation. They're losing their military-aged men who should be doing labor or working towards becoming entrepreneurs in their own home nation to build their nation. Western nations are accepting their university students, their hardworking military-aged men, and even taking some of the next generation. How is source country ABC benefiting from that transaction? The answer is they're not. You know, the way I look at it, or the way I think about it, is let's look at the Middle East. The Middle East has an extremism problem. Well, what good are we doing if we're simply extracting all the people that we believe to not be extremists out of those nations while closing the door to everybody else? We're taking all of the good people out and leaving all of the extremists there to take over. In other words, creating extremist boiling pots all over the place. Look what Joe Biden did in Afghanistan. I mean, that's like the next level version of it, but that's kind of the way that I think of it. All the forward-thinking young people are leaving, and then all that's left is a corrupt authoritarian country in decline. We cannot solve the world's problems. It's naive to think that. It's naive to think that we could bring democracy to the world. Not gonna happen. Ever. Literally never. It's naive to think that we could solve the world's poverty by simply importing the world's poor. Not going to happen. Enough with the short-sighted emotional nonsense. It's hard enough to take care of 300+ million American citizens, let alone taking care of the world's poor and the world's problems. At some point, I mean, enough has to be enough. People can take care of themselves, put your own house together, before you start accepting the whole frickin' neighborhood through your front door. It's common sense, it's basic leadership. This emotion-based Democrat approach is so frickin' stupid, it's not even funny. And the craziest part is how that's not clear to people. It is clear as day. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.